Hey, everybody. As we see some movement, as we finally see some movement on the coaching front, we are starting to get an idea of what the impact is going to be on our Chicago Bears. So let's get to it. Matt Eberflus and Luke Getsy, they survived Black Monday, but now let's cover what happened today. The Bears are, in fact, making staff changes. Offensive coordinator Luke Getsy and members of his staff, they've been fired per Tom Pelissero on Twitter. So now where we're at, Chicago now needs 2 new coordinators for 2024. And I just don't like to celebrate this. I want to get this out there. This affects a ton of families and livelihoods outside of Getsy. We're going to pray that they find a good landing spot. But I fully believe this was the right move to get rid of Getsy. I just believe it's important to understand something as far as Flus. The Bears, they will not just fire Coach Flus now and hope someone's available. There needs to be a clear and confirmed pivot in order to do so. Him leaving the Bears is still fully possible, and I'm going to talk about that. But as it seems right now, Coach Flus is staying. Let's look at some possible ripple effects, some of them being brought to light by Courtney Cronin via Twitter. She does such a fantastic job. She brings to first point. If we want to set Flus and the organization up in a way that they can succeed, we got to have Coach Flus getting a contract extension. Why is that? We now have to hire a whole new staff on the offensive side, right? Quarterbacks coach, offensive coordinator. I'm really happy that we're keeping our offensive line coach, by the way. But in general, the whole shebang, everyone needs to be replaced. We need to be able to choose from the best of the best. But the problem, think about it if you're an offensive coordinator. If you're a great one, you likely have your choice of several places, right? Would you want to take the job that has some lame duck coach who could easily be fired if it isn't a fantastic season? Or would you rather have a coach that is in a fluid, that is in a stable position? Here's what happens if a coach is fired. Typically, the whole staff goes. If it's a coach who cares about his staff, that would be a huge consideration to take the job. If Flus, if he's in fact staying with a contract extension, that puts someone like Eric Bieniemy. He needs to be a top candidate, and we need to make this as attractive as possible for our offensive coordinator candidate, and that starts with a stable head coaching situation. Let me get rid of that. We can move on too with point 2 that I want to bring up. Are we sticking with Justin Fields? That's the big question, right? Look, we knew Getsy was going to be fired. This doesn't answer one bit if we're keeping Fields or not. Nothing has changed. We knew that this firing was going to happen. So if he does stay here, though, if Fields does stay here, he's going to be learning his 3rd offense in 4 years. That's not great. One that could lead to growing pains once again, this situation. It takes most of a year, right? Takes most of a year to learn even the verbiage of an offense, let alone be able to execute the whole scheme. A tall task, but you know what? I don't believe in this narrative. A rookie quarterback, he'd be doing essentially the same thing. Sure, the transition from high school to college is one thing that's fairly easy, but you're going to have a college quarterback as a rookie coming from his college scheme and completely relearning a new terminology and a new way of doing things while adjusting to the speed of the pro game. So I kind of reject this narrative as far as this being difficult for Fields to adjust to a new offensive coordinator. Let's just table that. So that brings me to point 3 out of this. So what happens if there's no extension for Coach Flus is what I'm talking about. I have a feeling about something. I have a feeling that if he doesn't get an extension, we might be trading Justin Fields and just starting over on offense. And he should be worth a 1st-round pick. Atlanta, everyone, that's a popular narrative right now of where he might go. But if we do this, if we get rid of Fields and keep Flus without a contract extension, we set up Flus to be possibly fired after another year. The Bears don't like to pay coaches not to coach, right? It's a thing with them. We're still doing our regular vanilla non-committal stance that keeps us in mediocrity year after year. We then become something. We become caught up in our regular cycle of hire, fire, trade, repeat that we've seen in the past. The whole point of going to this regime, a real team president in Warren and a GM from a winning system, Poles in Kansas City, he helped build that team. we just don't want to do this anymore. It's not the point of switching to this regime. Fox to Trubisky, gross. Then Trubisky to Nagy, Nagy to Justin Fields. Now we're at Fields to Eberflus. Ultimately, the Bears, we could have broken that cycle if we decided to make changes across the board. But if we're so far moving, if we're on this path of moving onward with Eberflus in 2024, changing quarterbacks, it just keeps this process going. It just keeps it going, this cycle that we're stuck in until the next coach is hired next year, and then we'll reset at quarterback, and it'll just keep going and going and going and going. So I think that we have something here at a crossroads. I think these are the repercussions. We need to make a decision. Either commit to Coach Flus for the long term or just fire him now and reset. I'm always going to stand on the side of continuity moving forward for both guys. You guys know that if you've been watching. I'm fully on the continuity board. And the only possible pivot for me, it's bringing in John Harbaugh. It's bringing in Jim Harbaugh, excuse me. John is not available, but Jim Harbaugh from the University of Michigan, bring him in and just swing for the fences. There's something funny I want to talk through here. Tom Brady, he's been spouting off a lot lately, and rightfully so. He has some good things to say. But Tom Brady, he gave some great insight and supporting my view here of how constant upheaval, it affects an organization adversely. He's always said he just loves it when other teams, especially teams in his division, when other teams fire coaches constantly. It helped him win championships. Anyways, let's hear it from him via NBC Sports. Tom has this to say. Look, I think the important part about firing and hiring and all this is continuity. Continuity is key in the NFL and in business. The more you have continuity, the more you can build on things over the course of years. If you look at football in particular, it's hard to cover the amount of situations that come up every week in a game, start of the game, end of quarters. How do you use your timeouts? Man, end of halftime, critical third down situations, critical red area plays, situational football. All these things need to be built up. These reps in practice, talked about in meetings time and time and time. Again, it's like trying to learn a language. What if every year you had to switch the language? It's really hard to build up any of that consistency and continuity. That is so wise from him, and I totally agree with this view. So let's move past this. Now I want to present another reason that we might not be done yet as far as the coaching front. This may not be over. This move to fire Getsy and his staff, it might be a courtesy that they can just be free to job hunt ASAP. But as far as for head coach candidates, there's a parameter adopted in October that it makes the interviewing window closed for now. It's a new thing. Interviewing candidates in person, it's literally not allowed at this time. So let's talk through that for a minute. I presented earlier, the Bears are not going to fire Coach Flus until there's a viable, like a home run candidate available. Right now, they can't interview anyone. So they're naturally not going to move on from Flus. I think this is not done. No one's talking about this change in NFL policy. We aren't used to it. No one's really covering it, but I'm going to cover it here. Let's look at it. A change was made in October that in-person coaching interviews are to be held after the league divisional round playoffs. So that's like, a week and a half. This change is meant to not only give teams more time to plan, but also to simply give teams a bigger candidate pool. I think it's also to make sure the broadest spectrum of coaches get exposure to the process. That's a good thing. And they get opportunities to advance. I love this change. I wanted to point this out so we aren't sidetracked by the Bears being behind in the process by waiting a bit to move on their head coach. Sure, they're announcing Eberflus is staying, but to say they're behind the eight ball or they need to hurry, that's not a truthful narrative. Let's not just assume something. Let's not just assume that this means Eberflus is bulletproof and guaranteed to keep his job. Outlets are assuming that, including Adam Schefter. He's super reliable, but I think we need to pump the brakes a little bit. I believe things are still fluid right now. We have some people saying that the Bears are moving too slow, that they're behind the eight ball, getting outmaneuvered by other teams. Don't listen to that. It's not the case. This doesn't mean the Bears shouldn't be moving at all on some moves. Many of us would like them to make. I mean, they just started with the Getsy firing, but I just think we need to look at the actual facts of what's happening. I think we are still, as a team, open to Coach Harbaugh coming into town, right? I think we definitely have to examine an offensive coordinator like Eric Bieniemy for sure. But with that being said, I wanted to let you know the landscape. Guys, let me know what you think. Like and subscribe, continue to comment, and bear down, friends. We're going to get through this, and it's going to be a great off season, I promise. See ya.